Welcome to Aging Insight with your host, John Ross and Lisa Schollmeyer. This program is made possible by
Welcome to Aging Insight. I'm Lisa Schollmeyer, and I'm here with John Ross, and we are elder law attorneys here in the Arklatex area, and we bring you information on Aging Insight, which we think that you can use as you navigate your pre-retirement, your retirement, and those senior years. So we all have a lot of the same goals. We want to enjoy life. We want to remain independent. We don't want to have to rely on other people, and we don't want to go broke all in this process. So Aging Insight is about helping you accomplish all of those things.
And so often when we talk to people, the stuff that they come in that they think they want to talk about is typically very concrete. They often will ask about doing a will, for example.
Sure.
Or they might ask about powers of attorney, or they might ask how to protect their home if they're going into a nursing home. They might have concerns about an IRA or their money in their savings account. But it's typically very concrete stuff. But there are other assets out there.
Yeah, there certainly are. These days, John, many of the seniors that I visit with, they use iPads.
Mm-hmm.
They are very, I would say in the last 10 years, we've really had an acceleration with a lot of seniors getting on, Facebook so they can see pictures of their grandchildren.
Absolutely.
And post pictures of their new grandchildren.
It's just becoming more and more common. And there's that one commercial that where there's the three older ladies sitting in a room, and the one lady has all of her pictures tacked against the wall, and she's talking about putting pictures on her wall.
Yeah.
And the other lady is saying, that's not how this works.
Right.
And she turns and says, I unfriend you.
Yes.
And she says, that's not how any of this works. And that's somewhat of a joke, and yet these days retirees, people over 65 have Facebook accounts. They've got social media accounts, Twitter, other things. They also have maybe online bill paying.
Yes. A big one, John, is online pharmacy ordering, where, if you use a mail order type pharmacy, that you can order your prescriptions through their online website, that you can save significant amounts of money and by getting that 90-day supply. And so that's a big one.
Right. And you might even, I can't tell you how many times I've been at a hospital or something and visited somebody who was there watching a movie on an iPad, for example.
Right.
They might have bought that off of iTunes or off of the Amazon website. And so they don't actually own a CD. They don't own a VHS or a Betamax or a Laserdisc or any of those other things. It's just ones and zeros buried inside somewhere.
Yeah.
So you've got all of this stuff going on in the digital world, and yet these are assets, some of them, and they're also can pose unique problems.
Well, that's right. So today we wanted to talk about how to deal with your digital assets. Some of us don't think about it that way because we can't necessarily touch all, those assets or whatnot, but really your email accounts, your social media accounts, your commerce accounts such as Amazon or iTunes, all of those are in fact assets. And John, how frequently is it that we talk to folks and one of the most important assets they have is that photograph of their great grandfather and his brothers,
Oh, yeah.
and it's not about the money, it's about those very sentimental family legacies. Well, these days our family legacy is often in the digital world.
Right. If you talk to a teenager, they've never held a photograph that they took. They're all contained in digital media. They don't print those things out. But you're starting to see that become more and more common. I can't tell you how many times I see grandparents on my Facebook account who are posting pictures of their grandkids. Grandparents who I used to remember had these big old thick scrapbooks with pictures of their child.
Right.
And now, as they've gotten to 70, those pictures are being taken online or with a phone and immediately uploaded to some sort of digital storage media.
That's right. We've just got a lot of hip, technologically savvy seniors these days.
Right. So the question then becomes, what happens to these things when you die? Your social media accounts, also your digital assets, some of which may be pretty valuable if you're a big movie watcher or a big music listener. In fact, one of the things that kind of brought this topic to my attention was the actor Bruce Willis, who had bought songs on iTunes and had bought, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 or $200,000 worth of music that he had purchased on that online commerce site. And he got to thinking about it, and he said, well, I'm getting up here, I'm a little bit older, I've got all these attorneys that, he's a wealthy guy, he's an actor, he's got all these attorneys that help him do his estate planning. And so he thought, well, I probably need to include, $100,000 worth of songs is a pretty valuable asset, and something that he might want to leave to his kids.
Different than that album collection.
Yeah, a lot different than that album collection. Unfortunately for Mr. Willis, when he started looking into this, he found out some things that he did not really like.
That's right. He found out that when he purchased a song on iTunes, he was simply purchasing a lifetime license to play that song and to listen to it on his account, but he did not actually own a recording of the song.
Right. All he had was the right to listen to it as long as he was living and breathing.
That's right.
And therefore, when he died, that license would expire and that asset would go away. So he's looking at it thinking, there's $200,000 worth of songs here that are going to go away mysteriously when I die. He wasn't very happy about that. And that could, I don't know anybody that has $200,000 worth of songs that they've bought, but I do know people that have movies and lots of other things that they have done on these different accounts. And so we're going to talk about, how do you transition these assets? How do you safeguard these accounts? How do you access these accounts? What do you do with them after death? That's what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the program. We got lots of good information. You're just going to need to stick around until we come back from this break. We'll see you in a second.
The Wadley Senior Clinic has been such a blessing for our family. Because they specialize in geriatric care, they take the time to really focus on Dad's needs. Their exam rooms are specially designed for seniors, and they offer lab and x-ray on site. With monthly educational programs on health and wellness of the mind and body, our healthcare questions get answered. Best of all, they accept Dad's Medicare benefits. See what the Wadley Senior Clinic can do for you. Wadley Senior Clinic, where healthy relationships begin.
Hi there, I'm Larry Sims. It's been my privilege for the past several years to be a volunteer board member of Hospice of Texarkana, and there I'm able to represent community members like you. We continually customize our end-of-life care to better meet the needs of our community. As an example, our medical director and nurse practitioner still make visits to homes and facilities. Call today to learn more about the help we can give your family. Hospice of Texarkana, the nonprofit hospice established in 1985 for the community, by the community.
Welcome back to Aging Insight. I'm your host, John Ross, here live in the studio with Lisa Schulmeyer, and today we're talking about digital assets. You know, when we think about assets, we don't necessarily, we think about things we can actually touch.
Sure.
We don't think about computer code stored off in some server in San Diego, California.
Right, and so, you know, the issue though is this technology, and each of the companies that have developed these various technologies, you know, they all have their own contracts and agreements that govern how the user of those technologies, whether it's Facebook or a Gmail account or a Yahoo account, you know, Flickr photo sharing, you know, all of these companies have their own contracts that when you first open an account with them, when you go to sign up for an account, it will ask you to review the terms of service and something called the end user agreement. And often you have to check a little box that says you agree to those terms before that account is created and you are granted access to the tools and services that are available through that website or that company. And you know, every company has developed their own contract, and so really it's been all over the map as to what the rights are of an heir or beneficiary of your estate, if any, and what the rights are, for instance, of your agent under a power of attorney. If you're still breathing but you're incapacitated, you know, can your agent access those accounts on your behalf? If someone knows the password, can they access those accounts on your behalf legally? And a lot of these contracts, they just had all sorts of different terms, and it was made it very difficult to plan for these assets.
Well, and you started with start with the incapacity issue. You know, these days, so many times you're paying bills online, you're getting messages about bills that are due, that come into email accounts that of course are password protected. And you mentioned, can you just, what about just, you know, hey, I know their password, so I'll just use their account and pretend like I'm them.
Right.
And you know, you probably could get away with that relatively easily.
Sure.
But there are some federal laws
Right.
related to on digital privacy and things like that that do make those things crimes.
That's right. And so, you know, and of course, you know, a lot of times, you know, conflict in families often arises when someone's very ill or someone has died. And, you know, so accessing those accounts because you know the password, if there's activity that's happened on those accounts, more often than not, I suspect that a jealous sibling or cousin or someone would call you out on it, and you really don't need the trouble that, you know, breaking a federal law of hacking into someone's account that is not your account. You don't need that.
Right, and it may seem kind of silly to think, well, you know, Mom told me that if I ever needed to do any of her stuff, that she always used her birthday as the password, and so I mean, and she told me at any time I could go and get on her email to help pay her bills. Well, she may have told you that, but that in and of itself may not necessarily get you out of this sort of pickle, especially if there's some sort of family conflict and somebody were to take this sort of thing and make criminal type complaints.
Yeah.
or other things. So, you know, like in our practice, you know, when you think about something like a power of attorney, my experience is that when people have powers of attorney done, they don't ever think about online accounts, passwords,
Online
banking, and yet it's become common in our practice to include that kind of thing that says that if I appoint Lisa as my agent under a power of attorney, that among the many things that she can do on my behalf, I also grant her access to retrieve passwords, open and close online accounts, establish new online accounts on my behalf. That should simplify her life as she's helping me out, and it might just protect her from somebody that thinks she's doing something wrong. So you want to start thinking about these sort of things and including those sort of powers in your documents.
Well, and of course, you do need to record somewhere what type of accounts you have and what websites they're on. You know, do you have an Amazon account? Do you have a Facebook or an Instagram account? Because these are, you know, depositories of photographs, of information, of recipes, of all sorts of things. You know, PayPal accounts. That's getting into the real deal there, John. If someone has a PayPal account that they've sold knickknacks over the years or whatnot.
Yeah, there's actual money in there.
There is money in that account typically. So you do want to let your heirs and beneficiaries or your agent know where you have accounts on the internet. You know, and John, I've seen literature that says, and you should let them know what your login and password, you should have that all written down somewhere. You know, I don't know that that's a bad idea as long as it's a secured location, but how often are you required to change passwords in a lot of these accounts?
Well, and that's the problem with so much of this these days, is that, I think I mean, I personally, especially if you have a good family dynamic with the people that are going to be following after you, and you're not anticipating any squabbles or disputes, you know, I think it's certainly a good idea to have a list of your accounts. And that might even include a list of your usernames and passwords that are associated with those accounts. But as Lisa said, that stuff requires constant updating, and it's not your choice. Oftentimes you try to log in and they require you to change that, which means you have to then remember to go back and change that. So I think if you really want to do a good job at this, you are going to have to be vigilant. Now there are some companies that have sprouted up
to address this. Wherever there's a problem, there's somebody.
Somebody comes up with a solution, and so there's one, and it's called Legacy Locker, I think.
Legacy Locker. There's LastPass, and these are companies where if you put your accounts in and your passwords in, and anytime you need to access, you can go to that one website like LastPass, and you can type in your master password, and it will display your accounts and your username and passwords that go
you
with those
use on
accounts.
all of those. And with those different things, oftentimes you can designate. They've already built it in so that you can designate who you want to be able to retrieve those usernames and passwords upon your death. So you can say, you know, if somebody provides you with a death certificate, then you can release that information to my spouse or to this child or to any one of my children, or however you want it set up. So there are some solutions for that sort of thing out there. Of course, there's other things like just, you know, maybe closing out some of these accounts. You know, you can live on forever on the internet. Maybe you don't want to live on forever on the internet. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to finish talking about this. Stick around.
Hi there, I'm Larry Sims. It's been my privilege for the past several years to be a volunteer board member of Hospice of Texarkana, and there I'm able to represent community members like you. We continually customize our end-of-life care to better meet the needs of our community. As an example, our medical director and nurse practitioner still make visits to homes and facilities. Call today to learn more about the help we can give your family. Hospice of Texarkana, the nonprofit hospice established in 1985 for the community, by the community.
As things get older, they require more care. This car and I have seen a lot of miles together, but because I take care of her, she runs just like she did in 1955. That's why I chose the Wadley Senior Clinic, with an individualized care plan designed just for me and a convenient location off Jefferson Avenue. They have everything to keep me running like new. It's not about the miles, it's about the journey. Let the Wadley Senior Clinic keep you happy, healthy, and cruising down the road of life.
Welcome back to Aging Insight. I'm Lisa Scholmeyer here with John Ross, and today we're talking about some assets that you really can't touch, but yet they are significant and they are out there, and these are electronic or intangible type assets, accounts on the internet and things. And so we've talked about you need to make sure and keep a list somewhere of what accounts that you have, and maybe use a service where your passwords and everything are recorded and available for the use of an administrator or executor. But John, many of these end user agreements that are signed when you sign up for services, they say that your account essentially ends at your death.
Right. So often, you essentially lose all rights to it, the point where you die. This can be quite a shock to family members who might want to retrieve the photos that are contained in that account, because whatever that service is saying, look, it's over, it's gone, and whatever digital assets were there, are wiped clean. This is even true in, especially with things like Gmail, for example. If you have exchanged emails, I've got email accounts that have 10 years worth of emails going back and forth, and contained in there are photos, notes, letters, all kinds of stuff. And like if you, again, using Gmail as an example, that account ends when you die, and theoretically they can then just go in and wipe it clean and erase all of that information, all of that data, and yet that might be things that you want to know about as the surviving family member.
That's right. And these issues have come up when the Iraq War began, and really internet access was available to our service members overseas. There was a lot of email going back and forth, instead of envelopes with red and blue borders on it, then these family members, these servicemen and women, were sending emails back home. And as some of these servicemen lost their lives, those emails were very important to the families. And for instance, there was a dispute with a Yahoo account that said that account ended at death, and the family battled with Yahoo in order to get printouts and access to all of that data. And I think after some years they were successful, and this has caused all kinds of account services to look at their policies about this. But that took years of battling. So we don't want to depend on these user accounts to grant us access at death. So John, because of this, state legislatures have jumped in to try to make it clear that under state law, for probate purposes, administration purposes, guardianship purposes, that the designated executor or guardian does have access to these electronic accounts. How successful has that been so far?
So far, they have been not successful at all, because oftentimes, again, the person who set up the account has entered into this contract, and that contract's got governing law provisions that say that it's governed under the laws of the state of California or the country of Dubai or some other thing. There is some pending legislation out there that they're trying to come out with from a federal standpoint, to where any company, at least located in the United States, would all have certain rights. And some of the organizations themselves are getting better at this. For example, historically, Facebook, if you died and you had a Facebook account, the only thing your family could do could notify Facebook, and they would turn it into a memorial account where the account itself is frozen, but people could still comment on it, but nobody can access it. Right. You can view it on the internet, but you can't pull stuff off of it or delete pictures or things like that. So if you snapped that awful picture and uploaded it to Facebook and died right then before you had the sense to go back in and delete it, nobody else would be able to. Facebook has now, though, kind of getting along with this. They've actually included a part in their settings area where you can go in and designate a representative to be in charge of your Facebook account upon your death. That person then would have the ability to close that account, or
get an electronic copy
getting
of
electronic
all the
copy,
content.
or maintain it as a memorial account, or just close it outright. Whatever it is that the person you designated wanted to do with it. But so they are coming around with it. But as it sits right now, you almost have to do it on a
Account by
account basis,
Yes.
and that's time consuming. And but if it's a sudden loss, that may be very difficult, because we all kind of like to think of ourselves as invincible. But as you get older, or if you just recognize your own mortality, not a bad idea to take the time and try to get some of this stuff in writing, get some of this stuff figured out. Make sure you've got people in place that can manage these sort of things on your behalf for when that time comes.
That's right. And if you're ordering prescriptions and paying utilities and stuff online, that's very important that someone in the household or someone in your family has the ability to know what's going on there. Because if you're the operator and you suddenly pass away or become incapacitated, that could really disrupt the survivor's life, trying to get all those bills and everything taken care of.
That's right. Well, you've reached the end of another edition of Aging Insight. We hope to see you next week when we bring you a whole nother episode. So see you then. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this week's Aging Insight program with John Ross and Lisa Scholmeyer. This program is made possible by
Mom and I have had many happy times together in this kitchen. Cooking is something she's always taken pleasure in, and I want her to be able to continue to enjoy preparing her own meals. However, older adults like Mom are at a high risk for cooking fire-related injuries and deaths. Unattended cooking is the leading cause of kitchen fires. If